Have you ever received a complaint about something that simply did not happen? A review that describes an event, a conversation, or a behavior that you are 100% certain never took place. If you work in any kind of service industry, especially one that involves Japanese customers, there is a real chance you have experienced this, and there is an equally real chance that you had no idea how to handle it. This video is about that exact situation. It has a name in modern conversation: the gaslighting review. And while the word gaslighting gets used a lot these days, what it means here is very specific. It refers to a review that describes something inaccurate, misleading, or outright false, and the damage it causes to the person or business being reviewed is real, even when the content of the review is not. Let's start by being clear about what we mean. A gaslighting review is not just a review you disagree with. It is not a review where the customer had a different opinion about the quality of your work. Those are normal, even if they are frustrating. A gaslighting review is one where the facts described in the review do not match what actually happened. The reviewer might claim that a tutor was rude when the tutor was professional throughout the session. They might say a hotel room was dirty when photos taken at check-in show it was spotless. They might insist that a restaurant served them the wrong item when the order was recorded correctly. They might describe a conversation that never occurred, an attitude that was never displayed, or a problem that was never reported during the actual experience. The disconnect between what is written and what actually happened is the defining feature of this type of review. In Japan, this phenomenon exists in a particularly interesting and complicated form. Japanese platform culture, the way review systems are designed, moderated, and socially understood in Japan, has historically made it difficult for service providers to challenge false reviews effectively. Part of this comes from the broader cultural context around complaints. Because public criticism is already rare and carries social weight, there is often an assumption built into platform design and community expectation that someone who goes to the effort of leaving a public review must have a serious and legitimate reason for doing so. The social cost of complaining publicly in Japan is high enough that many people, including platform moderators and other customers, assume that anyone willing to pay that cost must be telling the truth. This creates an environment where false or inaccurate reviews can persist simply because the system was not designed with the expectation that they would exist in significant numbers. This assumption of reviewer credibility, while understandable given Japan's complaint culture, creates a real problem for service providers dealing with inaccurate feedback. On many Japanese platforms, the process for disputing a review requires substantial documentation and often results in a review staying visible while the dispute is being processed, which can take weeks or even months. During that time, other potential customers are reading a description of events that never happened. For small businesses, independent tutors, or individual service providers who depend on their reputation for ongoing income, even one false review that stays visible for an extended period can cause measurable harm. So, why does this happen? Why would someone leave a review describing something that did not occur? The reasons are more varied than you might expect. In some cases, the reviewer genuinely misremembered or misunderstood what happened. Human memory is not a recording device. It is a reconstruction, and reconstructions are influenced by emotions, expectations, and the stories we tell ourselves after the fact. A customer who expected a service to feel a certain way and was disappointed might unconsciously fill in the gaps with details that match their emotional experience rather than the factual one. They felt dismissed, so in their memory, the provider was dismissive, even if their actual behavior did not support that interpretation. They felt embarrassed by a correction, so in their memory, the correction was harsh, even if it was delivered gently. This is not deliberate dishonesty in most cases. It is the way human memory works under emotional stress, and it is worth understanding because it changes how you approach the situation. In other cases, the inaccuracy is more deliberate. Some reviewers knowingly describe events that did not happen because they want to cause damage, and they understand that a vague complaint about feelings is harder to disprove than a specific factual claim. This type of reviewer is rarer, but more strategically harmful. They often write in a tone that sounds credible and reasonable, which makes the false content harder to identify and challenge. In Japan specifically, the politeness norms that shape written communication mean that even deliberately false reviews are often written in measured, careful language, which makes them look even more credible to a reader who does not know the actual facts of the situation. There is also a category of false reviews that comes from confusion between different service providers. A customer might have a bad experience with one business and accidentally post the review on the profile of a completely different business with a similar name. This is more common on platforms where multiple providers are listed in the same category and the interface makes it easy to mix them up. On Japanese platforms like Google Maps Japan, Tablog for restaurants, or various English learning platforms, this type of mistaken review happens with enough regularity that it is worth considering as a possibility when a review describes something that genuinely does not match your service. How do service providers across different industries navigate this? Hotels in Japan that deal with false reviews often respond publicly in writing, carefully, formally, and with specific reference to their records. The goal is not to win an argument with the reviewer. The goal is to provide context for other customers who read the review and might otherwise take it at face value. A well-written response that says something like, "We have reviewed the records from this guest's stay and our documentation shows a different account of events. We welcome any guest who has concerns to contact us directly," does not erase the false review, but it does signal to other readers that there is another side to the story. It also demonstrates professionalism, which itself is reassuring to potential customers. For restaurants dealing with reviews that describe food items they do not serve or experiences that their staff have no record of, the approach is similar. Document everything. Keep records. Respond calmly and factually. On Japanese platforms specifically, the community of readers tends to be observant. Other users often notice when a review seems inconsistent with the general pattern of feedback for a business, and a provider's calm and factual response can actually build trust rather than damage it. For online tutors and educators, a group that is particularly vulnerable to this type of review because their sessions are personal, one-on-one, and often conducted without written records, the challenge is more significant. A tutor who is accused of being rude, unprepared, or dismissive in a review has very limited means of proving otherwise unless the session was recorded. This is one of the practical arguments for session recording where platforms allow it and where both parties are informed. A recording does not just protect students, it protects service providers from descriptions of events that did not occur. On platforms that do not support recording, keeping detailed personal notes immediately after each session, noting what material was covered, how the student responded, and any unusual interactions, creates at least a personal record that can be referenced if a dispute arises. The broader question of why Japanese platform culture allows false reviews to persist is connected to the challenge of moderation at scale. Japanese review platforms, like platforms globally, are dealing with enormous volumes of content and have limited human review capacity. Automated systems for detecting false or misleading reviews are improving but are still far from reliable. The cultural reluctance to assume bad faith, because publicly blaming someone for lying is itself considered a socially serious act in Japan, means that platform teams are often slow to act on disputed reviews even when the service provider has documentation. This is not unique to Japan, but the cultural overlay makes it more pronounced. What does this mean for foreign businesses and individual service providers working with Japanese customers? A few things are worth keeping in mind. First, when you receive a review that describes something you are certain did not happen, your immediate emotional response, shock, anger, the urge to publicly defend yourself in detail, is understandable but often counterproductive, especially on Japanese platforms where aggressive self-defense can look worse to readers than the review itself. Calm, specific, and professional responses are far more effective. Second, documentation is your best protection. Keep records. Note dates, times, and details. If your platform allows any form of session logging, use it. Third, understand that other customers reading the reviews are often more perceptive than you think. Readers who are familiar with Japanese review culture know that extreme or unusual reviews sometimes reflect the reviewer's state of mind rather than the actual service. A single wildly inconsistent review surrounded by otherwise positive feedback often raises flags for experienced readers rather than convincing them. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, do not let a false review rewrite your own understanding of what happened. This is where the word gaslighting becomes truly relevant. When someone describes a version of events that contradicts your own clear memory and your own records, the natural human response is to second-guess yourself. Did I say something wrong without realizing it? Was I harsher than I thought? This self-doubt is normal, but it becomes damaging when it leads you to accept a false narrative about your own behavior. If you have records, notes, or any form of documentation that contradicts the review, trust your documentation. If colleagues or other students who know your work find the description unrecognizable, take that seriously. Your reputation, built across hundreds or thousands of real interactions, is a far more accurate picture of who you are than one inaccurate review written by someone who may have been having the worst week of their life, confused you with someone else, or decided that the truth was less satisfying than the version they needed to tell. False reviews exist in every market and on every platform. In Japan, They exist within a cultural context that makes them particularly complicated to challenge and particularly impactful when they appear. Understanding that context does not make false reviews acceptable, it makes them navigable. And navigating them with calm, documentation, and a clear sense of your own actual record is the most effective response available to any service provider, regardless of industry. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for Japanese and Korean language learning content, fun ESL class stories, sometimes even the toxic ones, plus videos about pets, plants, and anything interesting I discover in my daily life.